He dispatched the inquiry that very day, and before the week was out there came a short reply from Mrs. Durbeyfield, which did not remove his embarrassment, for it bore no address, though to his surprise it was not written from Marlott. Sir, I write these few lines to say that my daughter is away from me at present, and I am not sure when she will return, but I will let you know as soon as she do. I do not feel at liberty to tell you where she is temporarily biding. I should say that me and my family have left Marlott for some time. Yours, J. Durbeyfield. It was such a relief to Clare to hear that Tess was at least apparently well, that her mother's stiff reticence as to her whereabouts did not long distress him. They were all angry with him, evidently. He would wait till Mrs. Durbeyfield could inform him of Tess's return, which her letter implied to be soon. He deserved no more. His had been a love which alters when it alteration finds. He had undergone some strange experiences in his absence. He had seen the virtual Faustina in the literal Cornelia, a spiritual Lucretia in a corporeal Phryne. He had thought of the woman taken and set in the midst as one deserving to be stoned, and of the wife of Uriah being made a queen, and he had asked himself why he had not judged Tess constructively rather than biographically, by the will rather than by the deed. A day or two passed while he waited at his father's house for the promised second note from Joan Durbeyfield, and indirectly to recover a little more strength. The strength showed signs of coming back, but there was no sign of Joan's letter. Then he hunted up the old letter sent on to him in Brazil, which Tess had written from Flintcomb, and reread it. The sentences touched him now as much as when he had first perused them. I must cry to you in my trouble. I have no one else. I think I must die if you do not come soon, or tell me to come to you. Please, please, not to be just, only a little kind to me. If you would come, I could die in your arms. I would be well content to do that, if so be you had forgiven me. If you will send me one little line, and say, I am coming, I will bide on, Angel, oh, so cheerfully. Think how it do hurt my head not to see you ever, ever. Ah, if I could only make your dear heart ache one little minute of each day, as mine does every day and all day long, it might lead you to show pity to your poor lonely one. I would be content, aye, glad, to live with you as your servant, if I may not as your wife, so that I could only be near you, and get glimpses of you, and think of you as mine. I long for only one thing in heaven or earth, or under the earth, to meet you, my own dear. Come to me, and save me from what threatens me. Clare determined that he would not believe in her more recent and severer regard of him, but would go and find her immediately. He asked his father if she had applied for any money during his absence. His father returned a negative, and then for the first time it occurred to Angel that her pride had stood in her way, and that she had suffered privation. From his remarks his parents now gathered the real reason of the separation, and their Christianity was such that, reprobates being their especial care, the tenderness towards Tess which her blood, her simplicity, even her poverty, had not engendered, was instantly excited by her sin. Whilst he was hastily packing together a few articles for his journey, he glanced over a poor plain missive, also lately come to hand, the one from Marian and Izz Hewitt, beginning, Honoured Sir, Look to your wife if you do love her as much as she do love you. And signed, from 2 well-wishers. End of chapter 53. Chapter 54. In a quarter of an hour Clare was leaving the house, whence his mother watched his thin figure as it disappeared into the street. He had declined to borrow his father's old mare, well knowing of its necessity to the household. He went to the inn, where he hired a trap, and could hardly wait during the harnessing. In a very few minutes after, he was driving up the hill out of the town, which 3 or 4 months earlier in the year Tess had descended with such hopes and ascended with such shattered purposes. Benville Lane soon stretched before him, its hedges and trees purple with buds. But he was looking at other things, and only recalled himself to the scene sufficiently to enable him to keep the way. In something less than an hour and a half he had skirted the south of the King's Hintock estates, and ascended to the untoward solitude of Cross in Hand, the unholy stone whereupon Tess had been compelled by Alec d'Urberville, in his whim of reformation, to swear the strange oath that she would never wilfully tempt him again. The pale and blasted nettle stems of the preceding year even now lingered nakedly in the banks, young green nettles of the present spring growing from their roots. Hence he went along the verge of the upland overhanging the other Hintocks, and turning to the right plunged into the bracing calcareous region of Flintcomb, the address from which she had written to him in one of her letters, and which he supposed to be the place of sojourn referred to by her mother. Here, of course, he did not find her. What added to his depression was the discovery that no Mrs. Clare had ever been heard of by the cottagers or by the farmer himself, though Tess was remembered well enough by her Christian name. His name she had obviously never used during her separation, and her dignified sense of their total severance was shown not much less by this abstention than by the hardships she had chosen to undergo, of which he now learnt for the first time, rather than apply to his father for more funds. From this place they told him Tess Durbeyfield had gone, without due notice, to the home of her parents on the other side of Blackmoor, and it therefore became necessary to find Mrs. Durbeyfield. She had told him she was not now at Marlott, but had been curiously reticent as to her actual address, and the only course was to go to Marlott and inquire for it. The farmer, who had been so churlish with Tess, was quite smooth-tongued to Clare, and lent him a horse and a man to drive him towards Marlott, the gig he had arrived in being sent back to Emminster, for the limit of a day's journey with that horse was reached.